Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome. This is Dr. Isabella Wentz. Today we'll be talking about the gut and thyroid connection and how addressing gut symptoms and gut root causes and triggers can actually eliminate many of the thyroid symptoms that people experience. If you are joining on Facebook, if you could please make a comment, let me know that my audio and video is working. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And same if you're joining here on Instagram. So I do see lots of people are joining on Instagram. We've got 50, 60. Amazing. If you are joining on Instagram and Facebook, if you can go ahead and let me know that you can hear me. Like we've got people joining in on Facebook too. So I started doing these. I thought it would be great to do some of these community calls on um, social media. In closure, short form content isn't really my jam. I'm kind of a long winded person. So I thought it might be great just to provide some education around thyroid conditions and what you can do about them. Last month, I talked about nutrient webinars, nutrient deficiencies in Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism, and how those can be a simple cause of the many symptoms people experience. And sometimes addressing nutrients can also get the condition into remission. Time, of course, right? And everybody's a little bit different, but this has been my experience over the last decade plus of working exclusively with people with thyroid disease and Hashimoto's. So I'd love to share with you some of the things. Another thing that works really, really well is working on the gut. So many times when people are that it's not great. I have music going on in the background. Let's see. Okay. I think this should have fixed that. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Let's see. Looks like the audio is in and out. Okay. Hi, Janet. She says, I like all of your content. I'm so glad to hear that. Christina says, happy to see you. Awesome. Okay. Is the audio any better now? Okay. That's great. I was listening to something also. So great. So a lot of you guys really like the webinar format, and I think that would be great to do today as well. And a lot of you guys had submitted some questions when I had posted that I was going to go live. So last month I couldn't answer all of the questions because I had a child that was unfortunately sick and a husband that was sick. And so today, knock on wood, nobody is sick. So I do have those questions that I hope to get through with you too. And then you'll have an opportunity to ask me questions. I can see everything now. So, okay, Carla says I sound better. That's great to hear. So today we're going to be talking about the gut and thyroid connection. I'm going to share some of my common root causes that I found in people with thyroid disease. Now, I'm not going to say this is everything, but these are some of the more common things. And so let me know if you could see my slides. And I'm just going to share 6 common root causes behind leaky gut. Before we get started, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. So my name's Isabella Wentz. I am a pharmacist. That's my training. I have a doctorate degree in pharmacy. So that's why sometimes I write Dr. Isabella Wentz. I do have a real doctorate degree, not just an internet doctor or a social media doctor or musical doctor or whatnot, but I digress. So my training primarily is in pharmacology, right? And health conditions and how to treat them with drugs. And I was very much on that path of becoming I worked as a public health pharmacist, as a traditional community pharmacist, and I worked in pharmaceutical sales. And I was on my way to becoming medical science liaison. That was my career trajectory. And that was essentially a person that knew everything about like one particular drug, as well as a particular disease state and a class of drugs. And I kind of laugh at that because it's really my life took me on a different path. rather than working in the pharmaceutical industry, I ended up getting diagnosed with Hashimoto's in 2009. And I, of course, was very excited to get on thyroid meds. I was like, I'm a pharmacist and I've got a thyroid condition, then I'll just get on thyroid meds. And thyroid meds can be life changing, incredibly helpful. For some people, this is all they need to do is get on the right dose of thyroid medications or the right type, and they feel amazing. And maybe some of their autoimmune markers actually improve as well, but they may not need to do much else, right? That was not the case with me. I had Hashimoto's subclinical hypothyroidism. I was started on thyroid meds. And despite being on thyroid meds, I still had a ton of symptoms, including debilitating fatigue, brain fog, irritable bowel syndrome, hair loss, carpal tunnel, anxiety, and so many more symptoms. I had this terrible, terrible acid reflux that I was like ready to cut off my head, and like a chronic cough that would cause me to um, start coughing in the middle of meetings at work. And I'd be talking to a client or a patient and I'd have a coughing fit. I'd have to run to the bathroom and throw up. And so, really, for me, I was like, okay, thyroid medications help this, but I've got all of these other symptoms. What is going on? And what does my gut have to do with it? And I basically became a thyroid expert, Hashimoto's expert, on a way to help figure out what was driving the autoimmune symptoms of my condition. And I guess, spoiler alert, it was my gut. And I had a lot of things going on gut wise, which I later learned most people, I would say, with a thyroid condition, and all of those with Hashimoto's being the primary reason for thyroid disease, have some degree of intestinal permeability or leaky gut, which I titled this presentation. And this can actually lead them to develop autoimmune disease in the first place. It can cause them to have that autoimmune condition keep going even when the thyroid gland is fully destroyed. And so I sort of started connecting the dots for myself and was able to get myself into remission from Hashimoto's in 2013. It's been a while. I'm like, has it been 10? It's been more than 10 years. And I've been mostly in remission. I have had a couple of flare-ups with, and I'll share about those. Some of them was with toxins, gut infections, and then also postpartum. And so we won't get into the flare-ups here in greater detail, but I do share about them on my social media channels, just very transparent with my journey with Hashimoto's and irritable bowel syndrome and all of these other glamorous things that that somehow I went from being a very private person to like now sharing my own health history. But really that is, for helping you take charge of your own health, because I know I'm not the only person in the world that has digestive symptoms with a thyroid condition. And I'm like, I was wondering about this, but doctors, conventional medicine hadn't made that connection. And once I made that connection, I was like, I need to get this out into the world. So my website, if you haven't been on it, is thyroidpharmacist.com. I've written quite a few books. So I used to have this awful, awful carpal tunnel syndrome. It turned out my gut was behind that. Once I got rid of the carpal tunnel syndrome, I was like, I could write. And I used to have to wear arm braces, and I had this like dictation software back before dictation software was good. And clearly that wasn't working as well for me. Now I spend a lot of time writing. I could spend a lot of time on the computer. No carpal tunnel, no acid reflux, no IBS. All of my thyroid symptoms like hair loss and anxiety, brain fog are gone. I would say if I don't get enough sleep now, that's a whole nother story, but that came after having kids, right? So really though, all of my symptoms are in remission, and I'm very, very happy to be where I'm at right now in my life. And I'm happy to be able to share with others on what they can do to take charge of their own health. I've written 3 books about Hashimoto's. The #1 New York Times bestseller, Hashimoto's Protocol. It's a 90-day plan for reversing thyroid symptoms and getting your life back. The New York Times bestseller, Hashimoto's Thyroiditis, Lifestyle Interventions for Finding and Treating the Root Cause. Hashimoto's food pharmacology, which is all about nutrition, and it also has some healing recipes. And the adrenal transformation protocol. This is a 4-week plan to release stress symptoms. I've created the Thyroid Secret documentary series, and I'm a co-founder of the Hashimoto's Institute and the founder of Rootcology. And what not many people, I think, know about, and I should be a bit more transparent with, is that I actually have also created courses and group programs and ways to support people and online communities for people that are looking for help with Hashimoto's and getting their symptoms into remission in a very supportive environment. So I'll be sharing more about one of these courses that I offer one time per year that allows people to ask questions, follow some detailed protocols, and really learn how to take charge of their health condition. So let's see here. Before we dive in, I wanted to see who's here and what kind of questions you have for me. Looks like my volume is going better. And I have Brahma here. I had blood work, no autoimmune, no Hashimoto's, but have hypothyroid and fibromyalgia. Thanks so much for sharing that. I will say some people might have something that is known as seronegative Hashimoto's. So most people who have Hashimoto's and most people who have hypothyroidism actually have Hashimoto's. And with that come thyroid antibodies. Now, some people can have Hashimoto's with no thyroid antibodies, and this is known as seronegative Hashimoto's. So that doesn't necessarily rule that out. Okay, Natalie, I'm glad that you're here. You said, I was diagnosed at 16 with hypothyroidism and have acid reflux, anxiety, hair loss. So Natalie, like this is all connected and we need to kind of unravel it piece by piece to get everything like into remission and to get you feeling amazing. Natalie, thank you so much for your comments. Awesome to have you here. And I think Jim Made Mermaid wanted to know, I've never heard of that. What are the signs of that intestinal permeability? Some of the signs are irritable bowel syndrome. Some people can have no signs of it. Sometimes it's like bloating. What are the best supplements for leaky gut and what foods are best avoided? Yes, we'll get into that today. So thanks so much for asking. Looks like I've got all of the Instagram covered. Okay. And you guys will confirm that you can hear me on Instagram again. I'm getting a little bit nervous now. Okay. Now we've got you here on Facebook. Timmy said, thank you for all you do and put out to those of us with Hashimoto's. Been reading and following you since 2018. Amazing. Thank you. Barbara, my side eyebrows are falling out and my hair, feet are swelling with red flames on ankles and brown spots and Hashimoto's and thyroid. Always get upper sinus infection. Can that also be signs of Hashimoto's? Potentially, I would look into dairy sensitivity and mold issues. Marcella, are you seeing patients here in Austin? So what's the right word to say? I don't have a clinic set up in Austin, but I do have an ability to work with me virtually. So I'll be sharing more about that. So not just in Austin. Any help with diagnoses with MTHFR, along with celiac, Hashimoto's, as well as gut issues, anxiety, and depression? Yes, definitely. So definitely stay on. Is there a correlation between removal of the gallbladder and Hashimoto's? Yes, that's tend to be more common. I also wanted to mention I'll be doing a podcast interview later this week, and I will be streaming that live on Facebook if it all works out, and potentially Instagram. And then we will be talking about MTHFR and gallbladder. So please make sure you stay on for that. And how long to take supplements like selenium for Hashimoto's? Janet, this is a great question. I generally recommend about 3 months for that. No more than 6 months, generally speaking, to get the full benefits. Okay. Hashimoto's with hives, you're in the right place. So I also had hives. I forgot to mention that. I had chronic urticaria, and there's a very important root cause of that. So I have to share with you, if you are joining here, Your symptoms are not your destiny. And now I know this is something that I wish I would have heard when I was in the thick of my thyroid symptoms, sleeping 12 hours a night, waking up exhausted, relying on 6 to 8 cups of caffeine to get me through the days in my work as a public health pharmacist. I would come home after work and sit on my couch and watch TV and then go to bed at 9 p.m. to barely wake up again at like 9 a.m. in the morning to get to work. I was constantly late at work. I felt like very conflicted because I had like all of these dreams and goals and things I wanted to do, but I just was so tired to do them all. And I was oftentimes called lazy. I thought I was lazy. I thought there was something wrong with me too. And now I will say, and I was married to my husband at the time of my Hashimoto's diagnosis when a lot of my symptoms were really in full effect. And now he's like, "Can you just chill? Like you've accomplished so much. Like why you have so much energy, like nobody can keep up with you." And of course, I do my best to make sure that I stay balanced. So I do go to my yoga and I do like do my walks and I get plenty of rest and all of that, but I've never dreamed that I'd be able to accomplish as much as I have. I have a beautiful 6-year-old boy. I never thought I'd be able to be a mother. I have a my own supplement company. I've written 4 books. I've supported thousands and thousands of people on their healing journey. And I can show up with a great attitude every day and just feel amazing. So if you are sitting right now and watching this and you're thinking like, oh, why am I so tired? Why am I losing hair? Why am I struggling with all of this? I just want you to know it's not your destiny. I hope that I can just be proof that you can get your life back, especially if you address your root causes. So we'll get into what some of those root causes are. First, I just want to go through some of the Hashimoto symptoms. Symptoms like chronic fatigue, brain fog, digestive issues, mental health challenges, anxiety and depression. I know I dealt with those. Weight gain or weight that's hard to lose, hair loss, cold intolerance, aches and pains. If you have any of these symptoms, I want to let you know that we can actually reverse them and address them. So, some of you had never heard of the term intestinal permeability. The not scientific term for it is leaky gut. The research-backed terminology is intestinal permeability. If you tell a conventional doctor leaky gut, they will kind of look at you and say that doesn't exist. But if you point them to the medical research and show the term intestinal permeability, they'll be like, oh yeah, it does exist. So I came across the research of Dr. Alessio Fasano, a world-renowned gastroenterologist and gluten intolerance expert. He described autoimmune disease as a 3-legged stool. He said these 3 things need to be present in order for the condition to manifest. They were the right genes and exposure to a trigger such as trauma, stress, toxins, using certain medications, potentially a viral infection like COVID. I know Pam asked, could COVID be a trigger for Hashimoto's? And yes, there is research that that does support that. And I think now we can say COVID on Facebook and Instagram without any repercussions. So yes, there is a lot of research showing that having the COVID infection can be a triggering event for Hashimoto's. And so this can also be triggered by other types of infections, not just COVID and not just viral infections, but also gut infections. Intestinal permeability. So I'm going to pause here and talk about the third one, intestinal permeability. This one is critical because when you take away that intestinal permeability, then the 3-legged stool of autoimmunity can't stand anymore. So that means autoimmunity doesn't progress anymore. So that is something that's really, really incredible. And I have found, you can't change your genes this day and age, right? You can't choose your parents. You can't necessarily always track down the initial trigger. Was it COVID? Was it a medication that you took? Was it trauma? Was it stress? Was it toxins? So on and so forth. Was it pregnancy? What really triggered your condition? Like we do try to work with people to try to track that down. But sometimes it's kind of a thing that happened once and it caused the condition to express and it's still there in the body in a low grade level. Um, and it wouldn't necessarily cause issues unless you had that third piece of the puzzle present, which is that intestinal permeability. So, intestinal permeability or leaky gut, if we can find the cause of that, then we can get the condition into remission. And a lot of times that's much easier to track down than it is to figure out which like virus or medication or some kind of toxin it was. So I know a lot of times people say Epstein-Barr virus can trigger Hashimoto's, but everybody has it and there's nothing you can do. Well, in my experience, people with Epstein-Barr virus, when you treat their intestinal permeability, a lot of those symptoms go away. There's some interesting research between certain gut microbiomes allowing the Epstein-Barr virus to propagate. It's sort of a way of modulating the immune system that happens. Okay. So we talked about when a chronic condition like Hashimoto's, with a chronic condition like Hashimoto's, the intestinal permeability occurs when the tight junctions within the intestinal wall start separating. These holes allow for food molecules such as gluten to pass through, and the body labels these as foreign invaders. And then the body launches an attack on the foreign molecules as well as to the thyroid gland, as it's structurally similar to gluten. So, as I mentioned already, we can't change our genes, but we can address the trigger. So, I typically cover on gut health and Hashimoto's as one of the big things that I focus on because I feel like, again, you can't necessarily identify every trigger and go back in time and not get that viral infection that may stay within your immune system long term. But you can absolutely always work on making your gut healthier. One of the ways that I talk about this a lot in my books and in my Hashimoto's protocol, I have a gut protocol that's in there. In my Hashimoto's root cause book, I have a whole chapter about gut health that you can reference if you have those books. I also recently created a program called the Gut Recovery Program. And this program is actually for people who maybe have tried things on their own, maybe some bone broth, elimination diets, and they didn't get very far on their own and are looking for more guidance. So these are individuals that have been like, I've tried all these things and they haven't really worked for me. I've really tried to heal my gut, but I just can't really figure it out. And I created this program with you in mind so that you can finally get the support that you need. And also for people who maybe just want to be guided through a way to heal their gut without trying to figure it out on their own. Perhaps they need some hand-holding from myself and my nutritionist. Today, I'll also tell you more about some of the gut tests that I use. If you comment the word February, you will get information on the gut recovery program. And I'll also send you, I'm not gatekeeping anything. You can discover a lot of these root causes using a test known as the GI map test. And I also am, and you can self-order that. So I'll tell you more about that. I will also give you a GI map interpretation guide when you comment the word February. I want to help as many people as possible. This is why I'm do the work that I do. That's why I put out so much free content. And I also love working with people. That said, my ability to work with as many people directly is limited. So I do create this gut program, and then it does offer a lot of support for everybody that's in it. So we are only able to take a limited amount of people. And so this is not a hard sell. This is not meant to be a hard sell on my program by any means. If it feels aligned for you and this is something that's right for you, please join. If not, no worries. I still want to make sure that you are helped. And there's so many ways that you can help yourself. And I'm here to empower you. Okay. So I want to see if we have some questions here. Just found you last week. Welcome, Tina. When hair analysis started and recommended you, I'm struggling to find a doctor, only have regular prescription doctor. Would you recommend a food sensitivity test? I would definitely recommend a food sensitivity test, and I'll share my favorite one. Let's see. Can you shrink nodules? Absolutely. One of the things that helps is treating these infections. H. pylori is one common producer of nodules. I accidentally noticed some people were shrinking their nodules with gut treatment. You can also utilize things like turmeric, and you can also utilize things like boswellia and systemic enzymes. I'm going to have the team link to an article about how to shrink nodules on Facebook. Okay. Let's see here. I was prescribed Synthroid at first, then the doctor changed me to generic Levo. Since then, I feel hungry. Could this be going and have gained weight? Could this be due to going generic? Sometimes it can be. One of the things that I learned as a pharmacist and that was really put into my head is that thyroid medications have a narrow therapeutic index, which means that slight variations in dosages can really have a big impact. And when you switch between two brands, like a brand and a generic, even that variation can really lead to some symptoms. I generally recommend testing your thyroid function about 6 weeks after switching to generic and switching between brands of thyroid medications. And for some people, Synthroid just works better. It really does compared to the generic levothyroxine. Best practice is not to switch people back and forth. Okay, let's see here. I have hypothyroidism, lost 95 pounds and gained 45 back for no reason. Labs normal. I have no idea what to do. I will say, it could be a lot of things: insulin resistance, it could be gut issues, it could be stress, it could be perimenopause. I'm not quite sure what might be driving this. I will say that a lot of people that go through my gut recovery program, this by far has been the most helpful program for people supporting people's weight loss. Okay, I've been on meds since 21. I don't understand how my meds could change so much after COVID. Perhaps you were overdosed. I would also look into um, testing your thyroid function again to make sure you're not underdosed. Still, I have a thyroidectomy about 6 years ago. I had an endoscopy and colonoscopy, and I have ulcerative colitis and hiatal hernia. So thank you so much for sharing that. I would look into low-dose naltrexone, perhaps some high-dose turmeric, boswellia, serum-based immunoglobulin. I will say in the gut recovery program, we do cover ulcerative colitis. The thing with autoimmune thyroid disease and the things that can happen with people that have thyroidectomies, some doctors will say like, oh, your thyroid is off, let's remove your thyroid. Unfortunately, the autoimmunity can be progressive. And so once your thyroid is no longer there, that might lead to other kind of symptoms in the body. Ulcerative colitis, there's some controversy about whether it is autoimmune or not. I will say I see ways that it could go either way. A lot of the things that I do recommend for Hashimoto's do help ulcerative colitis. And then my husband also had this right after the birth of our son, and we were able to get him into remission. So I do have an ulcerative colitis protocol inside the gut recovery program. And I'll also be sharing a podcast interview in about a month and a half about how we got him into remission. So I hope that provides some resources for you. Mm. Trimethylglycine supplements have caused hives. Potentially, that might be related to a histamine release. Potentially, you're breaking up some biofilms. Perhaps you might benefit from more treatments. I still feel so symptomatic on levothyroxine. I'm lost, plus in perimenopause. A lot of people do feel symptomatic on thyroid meds. I was definitely one of them. This is why I do the work that I do. So hopefully I'll be able to offer some things that you can start doing in your day-to-day life right now to help yourself. Have hypothyroidism, leaky gut, yeast overgrowth, constantly feeling like I'm fighting a bug. Okay, so you're in the right place. Many people with similar presentations might benefit from looking into mold. Okay, let's see here. Thank you for joining. And then, you guys, if you are on Instagram and you are not able to get my autoresponder, you might have to DM me with the word February. Okay. So I forgot to mention that my team mentioned that the autoresponders were not working on Instagram Live. Okay. So let's talk about some of the common root causes that I see. One big root cause for Hashimoto's is gluten sensitivity. And this is something that I have found about 88% of people that I've worked with and that I've surveyed, over a few thousand people at this point, they do feel better off of gluten. In some cases, especially in those that have maybe undiagnosed celiac disease, getting off of gluten can produce like a complete remission of Hashimoto's, where their thyroid function comes back on track and all of the people's symptoms are gone. I have had enough clients with this where I could confidently say that this can happen. Absolutely. Now, not everybody with Hashimoto's has celiac disease. Celiac disease is more common in Hashimoto's. But even if you don't have celiac disease, you still might benefit from going on a gluten-free diet. Um, there is a cross-reactive protein on gluten that can cross-react with the thyroid gland. And so oftentimes I see, even if people don't have a complete remission of Hashimoto's going gluten-free, they feel significantly better. They just have more energy, their brain function comes back on track, they can lose weight without trying, they don't have pain anymore. It is quite helpful when we can, get off of gluten when we have a thyroid issue. This is one of my non-negotiable recommendations for people with Hashimoto's in my experience. I was also sensitive to dairy. Getting off of gluten and dairy within 3 days, my acid reflux was gone, my bloating was gone, and then my carpal tunnel about 2 weeks later improved and was completely like gone. And I had these symptoms for IBS was about maybe 10 years at that point. I started having it in pharmacy school. And then the carpal tunnel was about 2 years, and the acid reflux was at least 3 years. And the acid reflux to me was by far like the most bothersome. I sort of like got used to the IBS, as bad as that, and my stomach hurting and my arms hurting, as bad as that sounds. I was just kind of used to it. But the acid reflux, like I was on 4 different meds for it, and it just was persistent. If you have acid reflux, I would consider gluten and dairy elimination to like a big consideration. So how do you what do you do? What are your action steps? If you're watching this, you might want to take out a pen and paper, and if you're not gluten-free yet, you may want to get tested for celiac disease by your doctor. It's helpful to get tested if you're eating gluten already, because that's when it would show up. And then you might know that you need to be like 100% gluten free forever if you have celiac disease, to the best of our knowledge. With gluten sensitivity, you might just need to avoid gluten for the most part, definitely in a very strict way in the beginning of your healing journey. But down the road, you might be able to introduce maybe some sourdough and maybe some small amounts of gluten, and it's not going to be as critical as it is if you have celiac disease. Now, if you don't have celiac disease, you may still benefit from going gluten free. Now, when I was on my healing journey, I went to an endocrinologist and I was like, "Hey, I found this research article that gluten and celiac disease and thyroid might be connected. Can we get tested for this?" And he tested me for celiac disease. I did not have it. And at that point, I waited for another year and a half and just kept suffering through all of those symptoms until I did a food sensitivity test. There's a company I really love called Olates, and they do an IgG test to check for gluten sensitivity. And they do about 100 to 200 foods, depending on which panel you choose. And this is the only test I can swear by. Other tests, I'm sort of like, you had a food sensitivity test, but I don't know if it's necessarily conclusive. Where this one, I've done it with myself at least 10 times, with family members, with thousands of clients now at this point, and I will say, like, I can correlate the symptoms. Like, if you come up positive on an ALA test and you eliminate those foods, you're going to feel better. Symptoms are going to vanish for you. If you are on Instagram, I don't have an autoresponder, but if you go to the Stan store, I have linked my Rupa um, my Rupa lab portal where you can self-order this test. It's one of my favorite tests that you can view there. Now, another option is, if you didn't want to do testing, is to do an elimination diet. And you know what it is? It's like you remove gluten for 3 weeks from your diet and see if your symptoms improve. And that's kind of it. And sometimes people advocate for elimination provocation diet, where you eliminate things and then you reintroduce them to see if you have symptoms. Generally, you'd see the symptoms within hours or 3 to 4 days. If I've had some people that feel so much better. They're like, I don't need to test this. I am just going to stay off of it, right? And then I've had other people that are like, I don't know if I feel any different. And then they did the provocation. They're like, oh, yep, I do feel different. So I know for me, I thought it was normal to like have stomach pains every time I ate. I thought that was like just what digestion was. And all of a sudden, when I went gluten and dairy free, I was like, oh, I could eat food and my stomach doesn't hurt. So, um, ooh, and we've got some people joining in on YouTube. That's exciting. Uh, Ooh, that's really great to have you here. YouTube notes put the links. I need to get more fancy with this. But yes, we will put some links up on the YouTube notes for people. And then if you are on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, I just wanted to mention I have my most active platform these days is probably Instagram and Facebook. Instagram's probably the most updated with all of the links. So you can find a Stan store that will have all of the links. Okay. Root cause number 2, and I kind of alluded to this already. I got ahead of myself, but it could be other foods beyond gluten that people may be sensitive to. Now, the most common one is going to be dairy. So, about 80% of people do need to be dairy free when they have Hashimoto's in the early stages, and they feel better off of dairy. And this, for me, was a really, really big trigger for the acid reflux and IBS as well. Other people may need to be free of grains, rice, quinoa, or corn. And any of these could really drive leaky gut. Common question I get right now is, do people need to stay off of these things forever? And I used to say yes. That is until I started doing a lot more gut work with myself and clients. And actually, postpartum was a very interesting time for me. I learned so much. Children are our greatest teacher. And somehow I accidentally reversed my dairy sensitivity. So now I do eat dairy. And I also have been able to eat like sourdough bread. I don't eat it all the time. I actually like to eat more of a low carb diet, just because I find I feel like my brain feels the sharpest. And I'm also in perimenopause. And when you're in perimenopause, I feel like not eating as many carbs, at least for me, has been really, really critical, versus when I was younger. The most important thing for me was to be dairy and gluten free, and the other carbs didn't really impact like my weight and my energy levels. So, something to consider depending on where you are in your healing journey. So again, the test I would do is the ALA test IgG test to see It's the most reliable test on the market. You know, I love it personally. I try to do it every year just to see where I'm at. And then another idea is doing a um, more, I guess, restrictive diet for some people. I generally like people to go on a gluten-free, dairy-free, and a soy-free diet when I'm starting off working with them on Hashimoto's and getting them into remission. Some people, they do need to go a little bit more restrictive, such as paleo or autoimmune paleo. For me, the goal is not to have people on these diets forever. Actually, the goal with autoimmune paleo would be no more than like maybe 2 to 6 months. What I've seen troubling is that some people get on these diets and they stay on them for a really, really long time. And then they keep losing more foods and their symptoms don't improve. So if this is you, the gut recovery program is for you. A lot of times, you know, foods aren't necessarily evil. Like I'm a big believer in eating clean and eating whole foods and all of that. But if you're just sensitive to everything you eat, there's probably something else causing you to be sensitive to all the foods. It's not like the foods are bad. Perhaps there's something going on with your gut microbiome that we can work on so that you're not sensitive to so many foods. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. Um, and some other action steps for you guys. There are supplements that can help promote healthy gut lining, such as L-glutamine is a really popular one. Butyrate can lessen food sensitivities. And I have a product by Rukology called Gut R&R that uses high doses of L-glutamine. You can also just get plain straight up L-glutamine that can be helpful. And I've also seen carnitine can be helpful for resolving dairy sensitivities. Um, Somehow stumbled on that one during postpartum period, and I'm like, wow, this is quite incredible. And then systemic enzymes such as Wobenzyme or pure encapsulations or Rukology systemic enzymes, they can actually help with some of those food sensitivities. The thing about systemic enzymes is they're taken on an empty stomach, which can be, you know, a little bit high maintenance for some people because you have to like remember to space them out, but they do work really, really well. Just to remove those, they're called circulating immune complexes in the body that contribute to food sensitivities and also some inflammation too. Okay, so another root cause of intestinal permeability is depletions or nutrients. Specifically, glutamine and zinc are two big drivers and healers of the gut lining. And in times of stress, the body will pull these substances from our intestines and use them for other things like making hormones, making thyroid stimulating hormone, using amino acids to fuel stress hormones. And so, a lot of times, utilizing glutamine and zinc can be very supportive of gut function and thyroid function. I um, love using bone broth as a source of L-glutamine. You can also take an L-glutamine supplement. The starting dose is around 5 grams per day, and then working your way up to 15 grams per day. Um, Divided up breakfast, lunch, and dinner is kind of the general advice. I might modify that depending on the person. I also will, like, for example, if you dose it up too quickly, you can cause constipation. Some people also can become agitated when taking glutamine because it can overconvert to something known as glutamate, which is an excitotoxin. So if you're somebody that feels worse, and you might have brain fog, anxiety, just feeling edgy with L-glutamine, this may be an indication that you're actually deficient in something known as in the vitamin B6, and I prefer the P5P version. Um, that can be incredibly helpful to getting that kind of taken care of, and that could also make you less sensitive to foods. These are some of the nuances I work through with people. in the gut recovery program. So whether they're like reacting to a ton of foods like histamines, or they're trying to do bone broth and glutamine, they have a struggle with, we really get people to start tolerating a ton of things. So, you know, this is, these slides are a really great place to start. But if you've been on the journey for a while, I wanted to give you some deeper resources and let you know that it's possible to heal. Okay. Just got a message. Okay, let me see here. Okay. Root cause number 4 would be parasites. So I know, I live in America and people say that nobody has parasites. That's just not true. Like, we might not have giant worms in our system, but we might have things like protozoa. They are invisible to the naked eye. The things that I've seen commonly in Hashimoto's, blastocystis hominis, this was probably my biggest root cause, and it can cause irritable bowel syndrome. It can cause chronic urticaria or hives. And it is something that is also associated with skin issues. I think I mentioned irritable bowel syndrome. I had this myself. Getting it treated helped to get me into remission. My thyroid antibodies dropped. My food sensitivities significantly improved. A lot of my symptoms got so much better. I decided to write a blog about it. And then I found some research connecting this to Hashimoto's as well. I was like, am I the first person that found this? And I don't know that I was, because some researchers, I believe, in Eastern Europe also found that eradicating this infection helped to get people into remission from Hashimoto's. I believe there have been a few more studies now, and I can have the team link to the blastocystis hominis article that I wrote about. But other protozoa are also potential triggers and drivers of this. They've not been as well studied. I will say, when I used to do gut testing, I would see about 30% of people with the blastocystis hominis on their gut test. And the gut tests that are available on the market may not be as sensitive for it these days. So I'm going to share a little bit more about what I use. The stool tests that you can use to test for protozoa, and they also will tell you about a lot of different gut function, include the GI map. This is the test that I've had the most experience with. If you comment with February, or if you DM me on Instagram with February, then I'll be able to send you a link to my interpretation guide. And I've also linked the test in my Rupa store. You could see that in my Stan store. And I'm going to have the team provide a link to the Stan store for both YouTube and Facebook. So you can self-order that. Your best bet is to order them through a functional medicine practitioner and have them work with you. But again, I want to make sure this information is accessible. So I have set it up as a self-order, and I have a interpretation guide. GI effects comprehensive profile is also great. Comprehensive stool analysis from Mosaic Diagnostics is also great. I also love the gut zoomer test. It's a bit more pricey, but can be more sensitive for some of the protozoa. And then there's also other tests on the market that I have recently come across, including one by a company called Parawellness Research, that can be incredibly helpful for protozoa specifically. And so when you have these protozoa, if you find them on the test, you can work with your doctor to get a prescription. I do love the medication called Alinea, can be very effective for many of them. And you can also work with antiparasitic herbs. There's a lot of different protocols depending on the parasite. One that I like to use is oil of oregano with berberine, covers a lot of them. And I also love utilizing the probiotic S. boulardii. That supports your body's natural defense against many of the parasitic infections. Some research also has found that Saccharomyces boulardii can actually you might not need any other herbs or medications, that might do the trick alone for some of the protozoa. I'm going to have the team link to the S. boulardii article on our website for more information. Root cause number 5 is going to be small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. With this one, I'm not sure if it's the chicken or the egg. Like, does SIBO cause Hashimoto's, or does Hashimoto's and hypothyroidism cause SIBO? I think it could be argued both ways. I know research has shown that 50% of people who were hypothyroid and on levothyroxine had SIBO. And hypothyroidism can really slow down the gut motility. And that means that the bacteria that are not normally, that just kind of pass through the small intestine, they can take up residence there and overgrow. This can cause intestinal permeability. And so, again, is it something that is like the chicken or the egg? I'm not really sure, but I will say when people treat SIBO, they feel better. And some people have noted a reduction in their thyroid antibodies and a remission with that. Now, I will say SIBO is not as straightforward as I wish it was. Um, SIBO is not going to be found on a gut test. You will need to do Blurath test. So the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth lactulose test kit, Genova is one brand that I recommend. This is something that can show if you have an overgrowth in your small intestine of bacteria that are not supposed to be there. And then there are things that can be done as well. So you can take antibiotics, you can take antimicrobial herbs. Rifaximin is a very popular medication. Oil of oregano, berberine, and garlic oil are some popular herbal antimicrobials. And you can also utilize a SIBO diet, such as the elemental diet. I just interviewed Debbie Steinbach on this the other day. You might be able to scroll through my Facebook and find that interview. And I'll also be releasing it as a podcast really soon. And you can also, use some different types of diets to help with symptom control, such as the low FODMAP diet, GAPS diet, specific carbohydrate diet. Tricky thing about SIBO, though, is it can be driven by other types of things. One of the big ones I see is H. pylori, which is another root cause of Hashimoto's. This is a bonus one. I didn't include this in this list, but it is something that oftentimes, like, if you treat SIBO without treating H. pylori, you might actually end up with having to treat the SIBO again, and it might recur. It's kind of like there are underlying reasons why a person might have that bacterial overgrowth in the small intestine. And so, a lot of times I educate about this on my articles and my programs and my books. And I talk about all of the different things you can do. And I wanted to figure out why people had such a high recurrence rate. So my gut recovery program covers all the bases because we really focus on H. pylori, we focus on SIBO, and we focus on protozoa, parasites, slowed motility. We also focus on food reactions. Then also another common root cause I see is fungal infections. The fungus and yeast candida has been implicated to cause autoimmune disease and food sensitivities, high carb diet, high estrogen, stress, medications. All of these things can make us more susceptible. Taking antibiotics can cause us to have too much candida in our system. And then there's also mold toxicity, another type of fungus. This can be a very powerful driver of autoimmunity and gut issues too. The tricky thing with candida, mold, and fungal infections that they're also not going to be found on a gut test. And I typically advocate for testing the organic acid test. This is from Mosaic Diagnostics, and this can find if you have overgrowths in mold or candida, and this can be a really big game changer. There are antifungal medications, herbs, and supplements. Nystatin, oil of oregano, Saccharomyces boulardii are just a few. I will mention that mold oftentimes can be quite pervasive, and it does need to be treated like both an infection and a toxin. So people might need to treat it in their bodies, but also do a guided detox and try to find its source where it's coming from. So I'm going to take some questions before I tell you a little bit more about the gut recovery program. What do you consider a full thyroid panel to know if you have a problem converting T4 to T3? I would do free T3 and free T4 to see if you have a conversion problem. Can we heal thyroid and not have to take meds? In the early stages, some people can, especially if they have celiac disease, they go on a gluten-free diet. Using selenium myoinositol can do that for some people. Some people can with the low iodine approach. Some people can with addressing their adrenals. And then some people can with using red light therapy over the thyroid gland. These are some of the protocols. I should do a live all about that at some point. Let me know if you guys like that idea. And then again, I forgot to mention if you DM me with the word February on Instagram, that will send you the information about the GI map interpretation guide as well as about this um, gut recovery program that is going to be available. Have you used medicinal herbs like ashwagandha or mushrooms like reishi or turkey tail? I have, and I really love them. I think they do work well for a lot of people. Some people might not do as well on reishi or ashwagandha, so it just depends on the person. Will this be uploaded so I can watch the rest later? Yes, I'm gonna try to do that. It's kind of finicky to do that, but I will do that. On levothyroxine for 15 years, same dose, still have thyroid symptoms. My doctor told me there's no magic pill. Sometimes adjusting your dose and medications can really help. Also, the functional medicine strategies that I just shared can make a really big difference. Um, After COVID jab, I experienced in conjunction with being overweight. I was admitted to the emergency department with the high blood pressure. I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh, and you had a stroke. I'm so sorry to hear that. Brahma, I stopped eating gluten, no change. Sometimes that can happen. And for some people, they need to eliminate more foods to see what's driving it. And they also really need to work on other gut triggers too to really feel better. Hashi's misdiagnosed with histamine problems, antihistamine diet, haven't been able to reintroduce food due to sensitivities. Been to many doctors and nutritionists, can't fix my gut. A lot of times it is driven by deficiency in B6. So we do need B6 to properly break down histamine. We do need proper methylation to break down histamine. And then we also want to figure out what is driving your body to overproduce histamine. Yes, it can happen when we are estrogen dominant and not having enough progesterone that can actually uncover histamine drive. The things in my experience that primarily drive it are going to be those protozoa and H. pylori. And we treat these, and holy cow, the histamine response just, you know, just is like so much more diminished. And then mold can also be a driver. I do cover protozoa, mold, and H. pylori in my gut recovery program as well, just for everybody listening and wanting to know if you can get more support in that direction. I did create my program for people who have, I have been to a ton of doctors and nutritionists and are not making headway with that. It's a very complicated program. I guess maybe this will be a good time to tell you about it um, before I jump ahead of myself. So it is a 15-week. So it's step by step done for you program that will teach you how to nourish and heal your gut through 7 targeted steps. So in the first step, we're going to remove reactive foods. In the second step, we recalibrate. In the recalibration step, what I'm focusing on is building up your tolerance so that you're not so sensitive to histamines. So I utilize various things I've picked up over the years from orthomolecular medicine to really help you become more tolerant. We support your detox pathways. We focus on P5P, help you clear out some of those histamines and oxalates and some of these other food reactions. Step 3, we go through resolving infections. This is actually like a 2-step process because first we target H. pylori and we also target biofilms where the infections live. We target, in step B, we target the other types of infections. And so, as well as SIBO, the overgrowths. We look at restoring enzymes. So I don't think I mentioned this, but also a lot of people have low stomach acid with Hashimoto's. And I think somebody here mentioned that they utilized betaine with pepsin and it made their histamine symptoms worse. So that can happen, or trimethylglycine is, I think, what she said. You can make histamine symptoms worse if you do things in the wrong order. So if you add in digestive enzymes too soon without treating an H. pylori infection, that can happen. So then we focus on resealing and repairing. So this is where we're focusing on adding in that like L-glutamine and bone broth and stuff to really get that repair going. Reseeding and rebalancing. So we really focus on getting you the beneficial probiotics. If you introduce probiotics too soon from when you have SIBO, that can make things worse potentially. And for some people, like just they don't do much when you introduce them at the wrong times. And then rebalancing. So we really focus on shifting the microbiome in that step. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about like what's the correct order for gut healing. The program includes guides with activities and strategies to address the root cause of gut issues for lasting healing, detailed supplement guides, meal plans and recipes, educational videos like these with PowerPoint slides and my little talking head, action steps for troubleshooting specific digestive symptoms. And I think what I don't think I share enough of, because I don't know why I didn't share about this, but people are like, "Oh my gosh, you do this? I didn't even know." I also have Q&A videos. So when you go through each step, you could submit your questions, you could submit your labs, and then myself and my root cause trained nutritionist, we get on and we answer your questions so that you have all of your questions answered. And we also have an exclusive support group where all of your questions are answered as well, of course, to our best abilities and not providing medical advice, but really holding your hand through the process. And so a lot of times people ask how they can work with me. And so this is how I get that question a lot through social media. Of course, we have to limit the group size because if I just can't answer that many questions, right? And so this is a very, very intensive program and offers a lot of support. It's for you if you're ready to restore your gut health and lay the foundation for long-term healing. Like if you've tried other things, if you've tried like eliminating foods, bone broth, antimicrobials, glutamine maybe, and you feel worse, you've been working with a lot of people and you've been disappointed, like this is going to be a great program for you. Or if you're just ready to heal your gut and don't want to like mess around on your own and don't know where to start, this is very comprehensive. If you're committed to taking care of yourself, you want to learn how to take charge of your condition, you want to be part of your community, if you're ready to shed your symptoms, this program is going to be a good fit for you. If you can see the results here, we have had really great results with acid reflux and asthma and bladder pain. Like I honestly wasn't even expecting to help anybody with asthma, but it's just amazing what happens when you address some of these causes. I have been able to help people with asthma. I'm very, very proud of that because this is something I grew up with my mom having, and we have been able to help her significantly too. Easy bruising, hives, migraines, nervousness, oily skin, palpitations, and red face. These are some of the symptoms that we've had a tremendous improvement in people, with 100% of people getting better. Mind you, this has only been a few hundred people have gone through it because we keep the groups very, very small and exclusive. Unwanted weight gain. This is another big thing where people are able to lose weight with this program. This was actually things are always a surprise to me. I was like, huh, I didn't know we could do that. And I love to, I used to work in outcomes research. So I love doing these little outcome studies to see what actually improves. And then I'm like, huh, that's so interesting. And so, as you can see, a lot of these symptoms do go away for people. My goal is always to get 80% of the people feeling 80% better. And we're above the 80% mark on a lot of these symptoms. And since we launched the program last time, we've also made improvements to address some of these other symptoms, like the low blood pressure, headaches, forgetfulness, are trouble sleeping, hair loss, even some of the digestive symptoms are also potentially adrenally driven. So we have incorporated more adrenal stuff into it to support people through that process. But yeah, I think the results speak for themselves. Participants have said, I learned so much. Um, in the past, I couldn't fit into my clothes. Now my gut feels so much better. This is the only things that have worked for me. It healed my sulfur and histamine sensitivities. And I believe I have every condition and pathogen that she addresses. And I think some of the more complicated cases can have a numerous amount of things. Some people are easy cases where they just have one thing. And I don't know what you are. And I'm here to support you through all of it. It's been life-changing and life-saving. You could read that for yourself. And so I'll leave you with a little bit more information. It's a 15-week program, and we walk through it slowly. The 7 steps of healing: removing reactive foods, recalibrating, resolving infections, restoring enzymes, resealing and repairing, reseeding, rebalancing. I will say the timing isn't ideal if you are interested in joining the program. We do close enrollment tomorrow at February 6th at 11:59 because it is a live program, and it does start on Monday. And where we have a welcome week to kind of get you onboarded. And the first day of the program is February 17th. The last day of the program is June 1st. So you'll be ready for the summer. You can make a big, big change in your life right now. We do take a break for spring break if that's relevant for you. If you have little kids, you could take a little bit of time off. Mostly I have little kids, and the nutritionist and I have little kids. So we do need that little bit of a break where we don't have Q&As. So I can't wait to hear your success story, and I hope to see you inside of the gut recovery program. Again, you can DM me with February if you want more information with that, or comment February if you are on Facebook. Now, I am going to answer a few more questions here. I woke around 3 a.m. every night and don't feel sleepy at all then. What's going on with me? A lot of times it could be blood sugar reaction. With MTHFR mutation, do we need a specific methylated vitamin? Methylfolate, oftentimes. Okay. Can we do lactose-free instead of dairy-free? To be on the safe side, I always start people dairy-free, just because people can react to casein and whey, not just lactose. So that's such a great question. Okay, and then I'm going to get some of these questions here. Air hunger and extreme fatigue. This can oftentimes be related to mold issues or low iron. Have hair loss and gaining weight. My endocrinologist says that I'm normal. They always say that, don't they? I would look into H. pylori as a potential driver of hair loss, and that would be and low ferritin levels. Thank you for that. I feel like eating gluten makes my hair shed like crazy. For some people, it does. Brahma said, I cut everything from my diet, no fast food, lost 45 pounds and no more for the last year. And sometimes, I do have people are able to. She mentioned that she wasn't so happy with getting rid of a lot of foods. And the goal of the gut recovery program is also to get people back on more foods. The Jackie, what's the food sensitivity test called? Alletes, Allettess. And you can go to my stand store and look under Rupa Labs to self order that. And honestly, it's pretty self explanatory. I'm usually like a big proponent of people working with their doctors to order tests, but this one I'm like, you get a paper and the foods that you're sensitive to are very obvious when you get that paper. And they do offer a consult with their dietitian when you order a test through them. So you can kind of get a little bit more information on that. Can I do the test if I already eliminated gluten? Potentially you can. For many people, it does still show that you're sensitive. You don't have to be eating it. I know for me, it showed gluten and dairy for a really, really long time until it didn't anymore when I did specific interventions. Have high ferritin level, but doctor ruled out hemochromatosis. I will say my husband had this, and this was type 4 hemochromatosis, and this was induced by living at elevation. I don't know if that's relevant for you. Sometimes inflammation can also drive up ferritin levels. Is the program good for somebody with histamine intolerance? Absolutely. Is millet okay? It depends on where you are. I think for some people, they do need to eliminate grains. For some people, they do well with that. Ion supplement. I do love Ion. Megaspore probiotic. I do love both of those products and Ion Gut Restore. I had to tell you that Hashimoto's book was life-changing. I recommend it constantly. Thank you so much for the kind words. It was truly an honor to share it with the world. It was kind of that book and my first book really made the suffering worth it, if that makes sense. Because I just was like, oh, okay, this was all for a reason, right? Is glutamine the same as L-glutathione? That's a good question. Glutamine is an amino acid and it's mostly supportive for the gut. Glutathione is something that supports detox. Can quercetin help? You know, I I don't know that I see a lot of people just by using quercetin that they see a big difference. Like I do use it as part of a formula with a lot of other ingredients, like leaky gut ingredients, and I think it helps then. But just as a standalone, I have not seen it to be as effective as I would have hoped it would be. Has anybody used Vibrant Wellness or Gut Tumor Test? It's so expensive. I have used it. I have found it to be incredibly helpful. And somebody mentioned my functional med doctor was terrible, wasted $77,000. And this is one of the reasons why I do what I do and I offer the group programs instead of like high end, um, I don't know, consulting fees, because I really want to teach you guys how to fish so you can take care of yourself. Um, I want to teach you and give you all the protocols. And for sure, this is not for everybody. If you're just too busy or you just don't have the bandwidth to like learn about your body at this time, like no pressure for you. And maybe you do need to work with somebody that like a functional doctor. But I really like don't want to gatekeep things. Like as you have, if you follow me for a while, like I share everything in my books that I possibly know at the time. And this program is really the latest update of everything I know about gut health to really teach you guys everything that I know to help you heal yourself, because a lot of this stuff, some of the functional docs don't know, right? And I didn't know it um, when I wrote my book Hashimoto's Protocol. And so I'm hoping to get this out to you guys. You might know that I have been writing a book about irritable bowel syndrome, so I've done a lot of deep diving on gut health, and this has been a part of that. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining today. Let's see here. Amber says I might have MCAS. I would look into mold toxicity. We do cover that in the program. Do people continue to take meds when in remission? That's such a good question. And yeah, a lot of times remission can mean that you don't need medications, but that's generally going to be in the early stages of Hashimoto's. So when you don't have enough damage to your thyroid gland, then getting into remission when you reduce your thyroid antibodies and stop expressing autoimmunity, you might not need medications. But for people who have been on their their journey for quite some time, maybe their thyroid gland has been under attack for 10, 15, 20 years, and it's pretty damaged, they're probably going to need a really good dose of thyroid medication still. Is iodine good or bad? That's a good question. It's a neurotherapeutic nutrient, so it can be anywhere from 200 micrograms per day is going to be pretty well tolerated, 200, 300, but anything above 500 may be problematic. Do you think toxins like Botox, lip filler are problematic for Hashis too? I have seen some people have flare-ups with those. I haven't personally tried it myself, so I'm not too sure. I did something called a BBL laser, and that seems to be well tolerated by most people for my skin. For I had some sun damage, and so far so good. But I haven't personally utilized those, and I have seen some people do just fine with them. But there are studies showing that they can cross-react with thyroid antibodies. So for me, I'm personally a bit too nervous because I don't necessarily want to get myself in a flare-up state, and I have seen some people flare up. Can you do oil of oregano alone for parasites? I generally like to combine 2 to 3 things, but oil of oregano is one of the things that can be helpful. And somebody from Poland said, "Hello, dzień dobry, witam." Do you need to take Armor NP every once per day? My antibodies and TSH had elevated since taking. For some people, they might do better on something like Tyrosint. My wife has elevated prolactin and will be getting an MRI done. Will continue to heal her thyroid and autoimmunity lower her prolactin, or is that most likely a separate issue? I would look into B6 for prolactin. Is mode a trigger for Hashimoto's? It can be. Okay. Hello, Isabella. I recognized you 2 years ago. I read your book. I'm more healthier than ever since this reading period. I'm so happy to hear that. Such an honor to be a part of your healing journey. Okay. Um, pH Queen. I was able to get off my meds. I made my own ginger tea, turmeric, probiotics, molecular hydrogen water, and EMDR therapy. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I could see, ginger, turmeric, probiotics are some of the things we use to treat H. pylori. And juicing. We love juicing. So thank you guys so much for joining today. Hopefully this has been uh, helpful on your healing journey. I would love to see you inside the gut recovery program if you feel like it's a good fit for you. Would love to be helpful on your journey. I've got to go pick up my little one from school now, but if you wanted to learn more about the gut recovery program, please comment with the word February or send me a DM if you are on Instagram with the word February. Few quick questions while you guys are typing that I did not get to. Okay. C. How long does it take to go into remission after eradicating H. pylori? It can take like 9 months plus, but people start seeing a trend within the first few months. What if you have more than one infection? A lot of times people do. So that's why in the gut recovery program, I'm really focusing on multiple infections. And I wanted to mention people do have an option to self-order labs in the gut recovery program and send them to me for review. But there's also like a track where you just do protocols without labs based on your symptoms, if that's helpful. Could COVID-19 cause Hashimoto's? It can. Um, let's see. If you have EBV or CMV, as these are permanent infections, how can you ease the load in your body? Some ways are through using antiviral herbs. Cat's claw, lomatium are some options, and also getting rid of some of the gut infections can help raise your overall immunity to help suppress those. I've done fecal FMT, I think that's fecal transplant, and that didn't help my gut issues. Fecal transplants are controversial. I did dive deep into them into my IBS book, and I think they can work well for some things, but I'll be honest with you, I think they're kind of extreme, and I don't think you need to do a fecal transplant if you know what the right things to do. Not having a bowel movement every day can cause Hashimoto's. I don't think it could cause Hashimoto's, but it can be an indicator that you are hypothyroid because most people should have bowel movements on a daily basis. Is intermittent fasting good or bad for thyroid health? It really depends where you're on where you are on your journey. If you are somebody that is struggling with adrenal issues, it can be problematic. If you are somebody that has, really supported your adrenals, it can be beneficial. What's the difference between your protein AI paleo and paleo protein? So the protein AI paleo is just hydrolyzed beef protein, so it's tolerated by people on the autoimmune paleo diet. And the paleo protein, I have delicious flavors of chocolate and vanilla, and so it does have things like stevia. Do you see low blood sugar during the night with Hashimoto's patients? And is hyperinsulinism common? Yes, that's correct. Would this often be related to eosinophilic esophagitis? So people asked on the low stomach acid content that I posted. And I wanted to mention the elemental diet can be helpful for that. And we have a beta track for people in the gut recovery program, a beta protocol for eosinophilic esophagitis. I have a lot of, when you look at the website for the gut recovery program, you'll see all of the things that are included and all of the conditions that it's helped. And there's also a few conditions that I'm studying, and I have some potential suggestions and still tweaking them out. So ulcerative inflammatory bowel disease was in beta in the first stages, and now we have a pretty good inflammatory bowel disease protocol that we share. And so hopefully that will be helpful on your healing journey. Again, thank you so much for joining. Let me know if you want me to do another one of these and what topic might be helpful for your healing journey. Okay, take care.